ESPN responds and says, not so fast. The ACC lawsuits are always in the news, so we're back on the big mountain to keep you updated. Hey, it's good to have you here on the mountain. If you're new to the channel, I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. And Steve, we have been dealing with the ACC FSU lawsuits. Yeah. We did our first episode regarding ESPN being kind of drug into this. And at the time, we said, we weren't really sure how much they were going to get involved, if they were just going to give an answer. Again, we said they're going to kind of piss somebody off one way or the other, depending on whether or not they say, yeah, we're going to ask you to seal the media rights agreements or not. But man, Steve, they won up that. Yes. They not only answered the question, but they actually attacked FSU. Yeah. I was really surprised to see this. And we're going to go over this. I think the most important part here is why they are requesting that their media rights agreements with the ACC be sealed. And then we're going to get into some of the attacking. And that was really the headlines. You saw, and I'm going to say it later on, you saw what the headlines were here in terms of getting into some pretty heavy wording. I'm not really sure why they went that far, but they did. But right now, clearly, it's the ACC and ESPN versus FSU. And as you've been saying, maybe FSU and the state of Florida could be on the other side here. We'll see how much that continues to kind of play out here as we move into this. But let's dive into this. On February 22nd, ESPN filed a memorandum of law in support of the plaintiff's amended motion to seal in Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. The plaintiff here, of course, in Mecklenburg County is the ACC. The defendant is FSU. In their opening statement, ESPN states that their agreements are textbook trade secrets and closely safeguarded as they compete vigorously with other sports networks for media rights. They state that publicly disclosing the terms of these agreements would be destabilizing and harmful, as competing networks would gain a leg up on ESPN in future negotiations. They state that the ACC and FSU have a commercial dispute, and it's critical to ESPN that their trade secrets not become collateral damage in those lawsuits. ESPN asked the court to grant the ACC's motion to seal these documents and cite two main reasons. Number one, assurance that a court's public files not become sources of business information that have a litigants competitive standing. Special consideration should be given to the privacy interests of non-parties, ESPN being a non-party. ESPN's senior VP of Programming and Acquisitions makes declarations that the media rights agreements first contain highly confidential and sensitive business information and trade secrets. Second, contain sensitive financial terms and royalties, as well as sensitive non-financial terms about future rights and obligations. Thirdly, the ability to negotiate depends on the secrecy of the terms of these agreements. And fourthly, the ability to compete with other networks and maintain their competitive position is essential to ESPN's overall financial success. So let's dive in to the two arguments to seal a little bit more. The first one, the agreement contains highly confidential, commercially sensitive trade secrets. They note that information that is in trade secrets can be sealed by the court in order to protect public interest of confidentiality and proprietary business information. Special consideration should be given to the privacy, again, of non-parties. ESPN states the reasoning as to why these are considered trade secrets under North Carolina law. They state other courts that give strict protections against public disclosures. They also state that their competitors, CBS, Fox, and who not, have taken unequivocal positions. So they're basically saying, not only are we saying these are trade secrets, it is kind of historically been that these types of media agreements are considered trade secrets, not just for ESPN, but for Fox, CBS, the list goes on and on. The second item, FSU's arguments in opposition to the amended motion to seal or unavailing. Basically, FSU's arguments in opposition to seal do not change the analysis. They say that FSU's claim that these are public records under the Florida law, Florida Sunshine laws, are hollow because Florida law expressly exempts trade secrets from disclosure. These are the very same statutes, again, that FSU has been trumpeting for their reason not to seal. So it's a little bit of a judge is going to have to say yes or no on this. You know, FSU saying we have sunshine laws, these are public documents, we have to give this. And ESPN saying, okay, that yes, there is sunshine laws, but trade secrets, which is what we're saying these are, and they lay out why they say they are exempt under that. So a judge is going to have to rule whether or not he agrees that they're exempt or not. Well, I should say whether or not these are trade secrets. I think a judge would obviously say, yes, trade secrets are exempt, but is this media agreement a trade secret? Now the biggie, the big headline, right? And I'm going to read this verbatim kind of. Whether FSU and its lawyers have committed a felony by knowingly disclosing ESPN's trade secrets is a question for another day. But there is no questions that trade secrets are carefully guarded throughout the United States, including Florida. The trade secret definition is virtually identical in both the state of Florida and North Carolina. I would say it's probably pretty identical, again, throughout the whole United States. Also, FSU claims that the records become public records in North Carolina law. Again, that is not so. North Carolina has a trade secret exemption in their Public Records Act, just like Florida. The agreements plainly qualify for this exception. Lastly, and then I'll throw it to you, Steve, they say there's no reasonable alternative to other than to seal. North Carolina business courts have repeatedly sealed confidential information, and a finding to not seal would reward a disclosing party for its own improper disclosure of confidential information. There it is. You know, again, the headline was, wow, ESPN saying there's a felony going on here. And yes, when you read this and that word comes out, of course that's going to strike you as the most, shall I say, crazy piece of this?
How about salacious?
Salacious, yeah, there you go. I like that. They're not crazy. Salacious piece of this. But, you know, I kind of got that to the end because I wanted to lay out the real facts in the beginning and why they're asking for a seal. What are you thinking, Steve?
So, as you kind of touched on at the beginning, from the very beginning of this whole ordeal, I've said my expectation was that at some point this would end up being a ESPN Disney versus the state of Florida. Now, for a while now, it actually looked like, okay, maybe we were going away from that.
Yeah.
Where maybe it looked like, you know, ESPN was kind of trying to stay and be an innocent bystander. Well, that's gone now. They've thrown down the gauntlet. They're showing what side they're on.
Absolutely.
Accusing people of possible felonies.
Right.
They're going all in on the trade secrets issues. Now, so, and obviously there are laws that exempt trade secrets in both of these states and nationally,
right,
from sunshine laws. Now, and they're making those arguments. And like you said, it's going to be up to a judge. Now, here's my thoughts on this. So first of all, I've said from the beginning that that's one really big danger for the ACC, and I guess ESPN as well, is for the state of Florida, the governor, the attorney general. We've already seen the attorney general kind of weigh in on this.
Yes.
But one of the biggest dangers I thought from the beginning was if we got to the point where the Ron DeSantis, okay, we try and stay away from politics, but if Ron DeSantis makes this his personal pet mission, this is just another part of his personal battle against Disney Corporation, that's really bad for them because, you know, his party, his associates basically control the state of Florida. So I now think we're one step closer to that, which I think puts the ACC in more danger, more peril. So that's kind of one part of my thought. One of my thoughts. Now, with this, basically, the lawyers for ESPN are asking a North Carolina judge to determine Florida sunshine laws. I mean, they are saying, okay, they're exactly the same in North Carolina and in Florida, and they may be written the same, but you could see in different states where they're interpreted differently. Different judges could interpret them differently. So I think it's a little bit of a Hail Mary pass for them to try and get a North Carolina judge to rule against a public institution, taxpayer-funded public institution of the state of Florida, to get a North Carolina judge to rule against them. I think it's a little tough because A, I'm not sure that North Carolina judge wants to do that, but B, even if he does, if the Florida State continues to pursue this in the state of Florida and they get a favorable ruling on their side, then you have again that stalemate that we talked about, where in North Carolina they're ruling one thing, in the state of Florida they're ruling another thing. Obviously, the ACC has made many efforts to skirt sunshine laws. We've talked about some of the Constitution, the contracts, whatever, different parts that were secret, where representatives from the universities across multiple states had to travel to North Carolina to view these. I've always thought there was a little bit of danger in there, that kind of just shows basically a conspiracy to skirt the law. So I've always thought there was a little bit of danger there, and I think this is just bringing that danger up to a boil. Now, is it possible that they keep these sealed and they're ruled trade secrets? Yes, it's very possible. But again, I think they're just exposing themselves even more to the possibility in the state of Florida for this to blow up in their face, to this become just a personal pissing match between Governor DeSantis and the Disney Corporation. And then what happens to the ACC? Let's say a Florida judge rules that this was not trade secrets, this entire contract, everything is invalid in the state of Florida. Well, Miami is a private university. However, if the contract is ruled invalid in the state of Florida, now you have those two states, or those two schools, ACC schools, that basically could just walk and do anything. I think that, I'm not sure. I mean, if they could keep these as trade secrets and keep them sealed, if they're successful in that, yes, it could help the ACC. But also, I think it just even opens Pandora's box of more risk to everybody involved.
Well, but yes, so I'm going to push back to you on one thing, and that is, why they kept these under lock and key only in North Carolina. And it gets back to this exact reasoning that they put in this motion to seal. Highly confidential, very sensitive business information that only a few eyes should be allowed to see. I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that, but does the law back that up as a trade secret and as to why they did what they did? And I think if it's ruled a trade secret and that does have protection, they have every right to do what they did. I don't have any issue with that at all. I totally understand what you're saying, that in North Carolina, a judge could say, yeah, this is a trade secret and what you've done is fine and it's going to be sealed and nobody's going to see it. But you could have another judge in Florida not rule the same thing. This one right now, I'm going to take one step at a time and just talk about Mecklenburg, North Carolina. I think what they put in here, I really don't like some of the salaciousness, as you mentioned. I don't know why they did that, honestly, because I feel like the information that they had in the beginning of this was plenty to get what they wanted. And again, it goes back to us saying, are they just going to give an answer or are they going to go into it? And they decided, for whatever reason, to attack FSU. And remember, FSU in their filings were very, very careful to not attack ESPN. I don't know why that is. That could be telling into and of itself, but they did not attack ESPN, and I was surprised in that episode a few episodes ago how careful they were when they were attacking the ACC. They were very careful to not attack ESPN. We'll see how quickly that might change.
And so, yes, and I think, and so we always talk about short-term, long-term. I think short-term for this case, what they're trying to do in the state of North Carolina, I think they made some good arguments here. For me, I'm always thinking long-term. I'm always thinking what's going to happen 4, 5, 6 steps down the road. And so for me, I think one of the biggest dangers is a lot of the things that Florida State alleged was that the ACC was basically in cahoots with ESPN.
Correct.
Not doing their fiduciary duties, not representing them, not looking out for their best interest, but basically conspiring with ESPN. So this is just, to me, is another effort to basically kind of flaunt or skirt those sunshine laws. Right now, it's the state of Florida. Okay. The ACC has multiple public universities in multiple different states.
Right.
Even University of Pittsburgh, a lot of people don't know, is a public university in the state of Pennsylvania.
Right.
I really think there's a danger there because, yes, you have trade secrets. And so if there was between two private businesses, if they're engaging in things, you could easily make the argument that those are trade secrets that should be protected. But if in a lawsuit alleging that a public institution was basically being defrauded, okay, and you putting out evidence of that, making allegations, I think that's a hard stretch to say you can't do that. Even if they were being defrauded, you can't tell anybody because this is our trade secret.
Sure.
That's a little rough, and I think it's open. I really thought we were moving more towards coming up with a number.
Yeah.
And this really seems like, okay, we want to widen the war a lot more.
Yeah, definitely.
Which really surprised me.
Yeah.
And I think it's just opening, when you widen the conflict, you can widen the possibilities that could happen, add risk, and I'm just a little surprised.
I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised. I'm not surprised that they asked for it to be sealed.
Right.
I think we kind of knew that is the direction they would be going. But to kind of take that second step, really, really surprised. I think it surprised everybody. Again, the salaciousness is the headlines, but really surprised that they took that next step. So we'll see what goes on from here. With that, I want to remind everybody here that on Wednesday, we are actually going to do a top 3 episode. So we thought it'd be kind of neat. A lot has gone on. We've been covering this from the very beginning, the original motions. We've had amendments. We've had these motions to seal. We've had motions to dismiss. We've had all kinds of motions. So what we're going to do, we're going to come out with an episode on Wednesday that's going to list the Big Mountain's top 3 here. We're going to kind of list the top 3, we would say, arguments for FSU and where we think there's maybe the highest likelihood of success, the top 3 for the ACC. We're also going to throw a couple ducks out there. We're going to call them lame ducks. And, they're things that have gotten news, and we just don't think there's much there. So if you like what we're doing here, that's going to be all opinions, our opinions. It's not going to be based on any lawyers or anything like that. It's just going to be me and Steve having a discussion about what we think may actually stick here. So if you're interested in that, make sure you join us again on Wednesday. And with that, hey, make sure you give this sucker a like. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you like this content. And we'll see you next time on the Big Mountain.